Thank you very much. So, I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. I know you're out preparing, buying your milk. Oh wait, it's just everyone who be prepared already. We're gonna go a little out of order. I'll do the budget transfers, we'll do the hearing of visitors for agenda items, and then we'll go a little out of order. We'll do the discussions at the end, and we'll do the approvals before. So, we do have some budget transfers. There's 3. This is for December 31st, 2019. The first one's the water contractual to the bond interest. This is a rounding difference of 1 cent. The bond debt, or the next one's the bond debt principal to the transfer to capital. This is the budget adjustment for the band principal paid out of capital account in the amount of $160,000. And the last one's parks and grounds contractual, the parks and grounds personnel. This is budget adjustment for accrued payroll in the amount of $1,144.62. Are there any questions on that?
Make a motion to approve.
Second? Anybody have any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained, motion carried. Are there any hearing of visitors for the agenda items? All right. Our first item of business is a waiver, a request for a waiver of the 30-day municipality notification. This is for Razor's Doghouse at 8178 North Main Street. Is applying for an on-premise summer tavern license, serving wine, beer, and cider. This request is made to expedite licensing process.
I've always been a firm believer of not granting this because I think the public should be able to know 30 days. Gives them 30 days if they have any issues, neighbors have any issues, they can then notify the liquor license authority. Where if we get rid of that, that just kind of shrinks their time down. So that's my opinion.
Anybody else?
That's a good point, Rich. I didn't think about that. They still have plenty of time.
My
Do they-
please, Sue.
Go on, Zoe.
Do we know when they plan on opening?
They
This,
actually plan on opening soon.
They're opening in March.
Yeah, I thought I read that on Facebook somewhere.
this
Do we
one's-
not grant,
We don't actually
This-
grant the liquor license. They normally come to us as informational only.
Right.
But this is, but we can waive the 30-day notification
We
to
waive.
the municipality.
we waited the one for O'Brien's, I remember correctly.
Did
That
we
was
break-
just they were just transferring
The liquor license.
the ownership of the liquor license, so they didn't have to shut down their business.
And the other one we recognize.
Sorry.
You got in trouble too.
I usually project better.
That's 2 different things. So the pub already had their liquor license, it was transfer of ownership. This is, they don't have a liquor license. And yes, you're right, it would give a shortened time for the neighbors.
So I'm thinking Rich has a good point, even though I don't see it being an issue, somebody may have one.
Right. Okay, so,
So we'll just vote on it then, I guess? I don't have an issue with it.
I think if you might want to make a motion then, and then you see if you can have a second. If not, then it just.
Then I'll
not
make a
pass.
motion that we approve the waiver for Razor, for the liquor license.
anybody want a second? Okay. We will be moving on then. Okay, I'm gonna skip 2, 3, and 4. We're gonna go right to 5. Is 5 actually 6? Marlene, is 5 6? Why does it say request to spend for fire vehicle? Oh, that's gonna be the
The permissive
permissive referendum, got it. Okay, so, in order to spend the fire vehicle, we have to do a permissive referendum, it's 30 days. So I'll make a motion to request up to $80,000 from the Capital Reserve Fire Account, SF 878, for the purchase of a new and unused 3/4 ton cab and chassis with utility body subject to permissive referendum.
Second?
Are there any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained, motion carried. Then number 6, we're gonna do in 2 parts. So, the request came to,
Six is this, your number 2. 7 is the number 3.
okay, sorry, 6 we'll just do in 1 part. So if you look at the sales quote that was provided by Mike today, well, a couple, like, last week, but then we, I guess, changed a little bit. The amount of the total amount is $71,633.25. What we're going to approve today, without any pending, is the chassis only. And I'll do that separate. And that, the cab and chassis, that way that can get ordered by the 5th. The only thing we're just questioning, and we just wanna run it by council, the extra piece of that, special order piece, which is the 11,000 and the 20,000 on here. Just to make sure that that can be included in the bid that we're piggybacking off of. So we're gonna do it in 2 parts. So the first one, I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the new and unused 2020 Chevrolet Silverado 3500 HD 4-wheel drive crew cab per Delaware Shenango Madison Otsego, did I say that right? I know those are counties. BOCES bid at a cost of $39,394.35. So I made the motion, I'll need a second.
Second?
Does anyone have questions on that piece?
I do, and I'd just like to state why I'm gonna be voting no on this and the other one. I think I believe I talked to you about it, and Mike, when you first were doing this. And I know we're not sure about the other vehicle, whether we're going to need it or keep it in a couple of years. I think that we should just wait, especially with unsure of what we're doing with a fire hall, where our money is going right now. I think until we have some of those things ironed out, I think we should have waited on this until we know more. It's just another piece of equipment that is going to be needing to be parked, which is taking up more room. That is why I'm not necessarily against the vehicle, I'm just against ordering it now. So I just kind of want to tell everybody why I'm voting no.
Okay. Anything else for anyone? No? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Abstained? Motion carried. Okay, number 7 then is, approve the special order of the NAP High service body. And I'll make a motion to approve the extras from Empire Emergency, NAP High service body, additional miscellaneous equipment, lights, graphics at a cost not to exceed $32,238.90, pending further review by town council.
Second.
Any questions on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Abstained? Motion carried. Okay, and then we have one additional item that we added to the agenda for this evening, and this is approving changes to the East Eaton fire truck that we ordered a while ago. There were several safety decisions why some things needed to be changed, and I really think most of it has to do with safety. So there were a few minor adjustments that we are doing a change order on. And so that is in front of you. If anyone has any questions, we can discuss that now.
What was on the truck before you added the stainless steel tubing ladders? What was there?
Just
Slip down steps, just like what you have on your engines, they're just this big. They're flipped down, but it'd be like a vertical climb,
Okay.
so the ladder's actually gonna be in a pitched,
Oh, okay.
so it's, and we just feel like you're just not, the staggered, the steps are slightly staggered,
Mhm.
where this ladder will be nice and pitched, and we just feel it'll be safer for our, when we have to climb up and down and pack hose or do any operations off the back, any work around the back of the truck. We just didn't, because of the height of the truck,
Mhm.
and looking at other apparatus that they were building, they have another one coming in Wyoming County,
Mhm.
and they showed us, and it made sense to us to, for liability's sake, someone falling off or just horn safety.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so. I don't have this on here. What was the total?
860?
It's $806 even?
Yes, yes, there's no change.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion to approve the changes, which includes a credit of $97, a cost of $721, a cost of $236, and 3 changes with no charges, to total a new cost, an additional cost of $860, for the new, or for the, what is the truck called?
Tanker flat.
For the Tanker 5 EC truck.
I'll second that.
Questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carried. Okay. I can't wait to start all this again. So, over the last million months, we have been working on implementation of our master plan. And we have gotten to we can do that again, I'm still in discussion. We have gotten to two almost finalized drafts. Some people would think they're finalized, some people would think no, they want changes, of the mixed-use district design standards, otherwise known as form-based zoning, as well as the signage code. And so, we're gonna talk about the mixed-use district first. There's been some discussion about possibly approving the mixed-use district standards either simultaneously with the signage code or prior to it. So this is an opportunity. Brian Culp, our consultant, has joined us this evening. He has braved the blizzard of 2020 preparation night to come and do this. Basically, I know that Dave Rice, who's joining us tonight, thank you very much, has a couple concerns in some of the areas, and I just thought it'd be easier if Brian came, could explain those to the group, and the same will go with some of the issues that have come up with the signage. So, why don't we start with mixed use, and Dave, why don't you go ahead and start with going down your, I know there's only a few, but start.
Yeah, realistically, only potentially 2.
Okay,
The setback is what main concern, talking with highway superintendent also, Ron, thanks. So right now, the code's setback is MU1 and 2 is 0 to 10 foot, which is from Chattagee to Park Street. Main concern I had when I read it is where the current setbacks of 0 to 10 foot roughly are in the hamlet here, which would be MU2 currently. When we do, we're both, I guess, let me back up a little. We don't have a village, so we don't do snow removal.
Right.
So we do plow the sidewalks, and what happens is there's no place to put the snow. The sidewalk plow, it's a V plow, and then as it builds up, every so often we go through the 5-foot snow blower, and you end up blowing that back into the road, or trying to stack it between the sidewalk and the road, and vice versa. State DOT truck comes and dumps it in the sidewalk, we dump it back in the road, and that seems like all it does. So my recommendation on that would be even maybe enlarge the MU2 a little bit, bring that to a 0 to 10 foot, start small and go big, versus a mile plus, almost a mile and a half of road with a 0 to 10 foot setback.
which one's MU1 and 2? MU2 is right here, right?
MU2 is, yeah, from
small
Roswell to Florence, so to
Okay.
speak. MU1 is from Chattagee to, Park Street.
So, you know, I think that if you said, Missy and I had this conversation, and, first, I'm not here as to tell people how to operate.
No, I understand.
But,
It's all good conversation.
my feeling is that when you have a 0 to 10 setback, the best way to handle snow load is to evacuate the snow, basically take it off-site.
Yep.
Use like a mini loader or something, and take it and clear it. If you look at what other municipalities that aren't villages do when they have snow evacuation, a lot of times there's just a snow district, snow removal district.
Within that village.
Yes.
Yes.
No, or town,
Okay.
and, you know, you set it up as an independent tax district for snow removal. And basically, you say, look, we're gonna evacuate snow, we're not gonna leave snow on sidewalks or right of way. The property owners are gonna pay into whatever the cost of the extra labor is, right? And that's one possibility. It's negligible if you're using existing equipment and don't require a lot of overtime. The length of the MU1 district here it's pretty long, admittedly. It goes, it really stretches the Hamlet Center. And when I looked at the properties in the M1 district, the existing properties, you do have a lot of residential along 62, or formerly residential, with some existing setbacks that, you know, I could see posing a challenge to, so I don't think you have to, there's other reasons why you wanna keep MU2 kind of confined to its current spatial relationship.
MU2,
MU2, yeah.
I agree.
So I wouldn't recommend expanding MU2.
Okay.
I think the relief then would be, you could allow, you know, so you basically would allow, right now, there's a minimum setback, right, and a maximum setback.
Yeah, I think it's a minimum of 20 or 30, I can't, under our, like,
Or a maximum of 20 to 30, I think, right? So, under the current state of this code, I think that we have a 20-foot setback for public enhancements currently, then 10-foot maximum setback, 0 minimum. So in this case, I would say then flip it, you know, go 10 to 20, make 10 the minimum setback. You have to be 10 foot off the road
for MU1.
for MU1,
That's-
which is the lighter use.
Yes.
And then when you get to the Hamlet Center, make it 0. And then make your maximum setback 20. That'll still keep your buildings 20 foot off of the right of way, which isn't, you know, setting them back so far that they're gonna start trying to put parking in front.
For MU1, you're
Yeah.
talking. Yeah, that's what I recommended to the.
So I'm at the same place. I think that if you wanted to get to that point, that makes sense. So,
Can you rephrase what you wanted to do with mixed use 1?
so the zone mixed use 1, which is does everybody have, I don't even know, you all have copies up there?
Yeah.
So they're the violet color, purple color,
Mine's black and white because we were too cheap to print color.
I'll give you mine to share, but I need it back.
I printed.
Can you not see the color? This is
Yes, but she said,
So-
said purple.
So the two zones, so the MU1, which is the larger zone boundary, that area would be a 10-foot minimum setback. So you could not bring your building closer than 10 foot to the right of way. And that would keep all the buildings sort of in the same line. But your maximum setback would be 20. So So we're not gonna let you push it all the way to the back of your property either.
Okay.
So, but if, and this is for MU one.
That would be MU one.
Yep.
And then in the MU two district, I would say, don't touch it. You're still, a lot of your buildings are already at 0, just keep it 0 and 10, and don't try to move it back.
Do you think that's reasonable?
That's what I suggested.
Right.
And I suggested even potentially taking the MU2, and if we wanted to go to, you know,
So,
as the town builds, we can go from Roswell to Maple to Pleasant as needed.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I understand you don't wanna keep snowballing it, but
I think that you could always adjust your MU2 boundary at a later date. For now, don't touch the boundary, just keep those 2 setbacks in mind. Your likelihood of seeing redevelopment is probably further out right now in the MU1 district. That's the areas that are a little bit lower hanging fruit.
Yep.
And you're gonna create a 10-foot setback. So I think the key is to not put parking in the 10-foot setback.
and I would agree with that, for sure.
So that makes sense.
You're gonna make, so you have that
I'm
option.
gonna make that change, yeah.
So, the only other, go on.
I just don't know, so you're still allowing two to be 10 feet,
0 to 10.
and one you're allowing 0 to 10, or 10 foot,
Well, so,
no, somewhere between 10 and 20.
so think about it this way. In the densest area of town, we want everybody 0 to 10. We don't want your building to be any further than 10 feet off that right of way, right?
Now, are we going off the right of way?
Off the
Actually,
right of
what
way.
the state says the right of way is, because that's further back than my property starts.
Right, well, yours is at 0.
10 is,
Mine's
right,
actually
yours is a 0, so we want it to be 0 to 10. You don't really want a building in a walkable hamlet center to be off the right of way. You prefer them on the right of way.
If we're gonna do that, then we are going to have to plan on doing something for snow removal.
Well, so that's what I'm saying, but you already are
We're already
doing
there.
something, you might be frustrated with it, I'm suggesting,
You're there as a majority, you're there not 100%.
Right, because there's no other houses or no other buildings being built in that, but if there are, like if new ones are being built, you're definitely, because that's what this is about, right? If anything new is being built, it needs to be 0 to 10.
so it's about a quarter-mile radius.
MU2.
Yeah.
Yes.
My sense is that you, as a municipality, should be able to figure out how to
We
remove
have,
snow from the.
2 years ago,
Sidewalk.
or 2 or 3 years
I'm
ago,
talking
we
about every
removed
morning.
it from there.
In November of 14 is the last time we removed it, which was FEMA. That was November. Prior to that was before I worked for the highway.
So,
We've gone through and
I'm
brought
even
it
talking
down
about
though.
just your everyday snow, sidewalk and stuff. It's very difficult to get rid of that snow.
But
Just
we
tell me,
already are in that situation, already there.
We are, now, just thinking in the future, if you're gonna have a few, I thought that's what we were doing.
No,
Well,
but if we did it in the future, then what you're gonna have, you're not gonna, the people who are existing are gonna be 0 to 10. If we moved it back, then you're gonna have this.
We do now to a point, but my suggestion would be, and I think we're on the same page, is leave MU2 0 to 10. Probably, I'm gonna estimate just from sitting here, I didn't count, probably 60 to 65% of your buildings are that 0 to 10. There's holes to, when Scott goes down the sidewalk, he keeps blowing the snow in front of him. And then when he gets to a setback building, he turns the chute and just loads it into that guy's yard. So the Penny Saver gets it, the Asa Warren House gets it, the rental next to the bank gets it, so to speak. So right now, today, that works, and that works fine. 15 years from now, if 12 of these buildings move to 0, then we address the snow situation.
yeah,
I mean,
if you see that kind of growth in the center, then,
we're doing good.
well, then you're doing well, then you.
Should be able to tax that.
Make an adjustment. And
Yeah.
it's, like I said, you don't have to tax the whole town. You can set up a special district just for snow relief.
On
But-
Main Street, that would be,
So if you think about it right now, so if you have state plows, right, so you've got a parking lane for a lot of the district in that MU, or what we're calling MU2.
Yeah, it's really through the whole district, so to speak, but.
So when a state plow dumps snow, they dump that bank of snow right along what we know as the snow storage area, or
It's
It's still
in
the right
5
of
foot
way.
between the sidewalk and the curb is where it's going.
So if you leave snow in that area mounted up, what you do is you detract from people using on-street parking, right? So if you're trying to create a walking hamlet center, and it's hard for businesses to get through it because it's been piled up by a state plow or a tandem plow. So if you can figure out a way to remove that moving forward, and cut through that stuff, that's a service back to your businesses, that's gonna keep things.
I definitely think there need, I mean, since we cut parking requirements down for businesses, a lot of that plan was for parking on the street. And if we start filling that up even more and not have any parking on the street, I mean, thank God we had some really windy winters.
well, that's
Yes, it's
just
a good
like,
thing.
there's global warming. Pretty soon.
Well, that's what we were planning on.
Absolutely.
If you were gonna assess those people where you had the snow removal, most of them are gonna be business. And business is fighting, trying to make a nickel. And that's taking more money out of their profit. If you move it back a little bit, everybody could get rid of it. And one of the bad things what's happening right now, it looks nice, flower garden, the trees planted in front of the pub and everything. But before they put that in, they used to take a truck with a snowplow on it, come down, push that whole thing all the way in the back, behind the pub. Well, they put that there, you can't get a truck with a snowplow in there, so everybody's fighting for that 3 feet of.
That's a whole nother,
A whole nother thing.
I mean,
It's,
But Bob, we're not gonna be able to move our current businesses back.
no, not, but it's, if something ever happened to them, where they burnt to the ground or revitalized or whatever, but you're going to bring the other ones out, you know, you should give a little bit of room, I
We
think.
get rid of the trees, we should be
so
more.
my feeling is that the comprehensive plan here says that you want small, tight, walkable hamlet, village-esque. And that means 0 build lines, because that's traditional construction methodology. I understand what you're saying about taxing businesses. Right now, you don't have the problem because you have gaps that you can plow into. So to that point, if you start to get those gaps filled, and people wanna build in that area, that's new development, that new development is gonna carry the lion's share of a tax burden on a snow district.
Well, to say that we don't have that issue is because we have more parking now that it's actually required. So like my place has more parking. The place next door, that would actually have been anything but what it is, and now we can't park on the streets in the wintertime. So like, where are these businesses going to have people park, I guess is my question.
So,
Because if we could get rid of the trees across, like Bob was saying, we could actually have people park.
That's different.
the vegetation between the sidewalk and the curb creates a big inconvenience.
huge.
A lot of the businesses used to plow that area, remove it on their own expense. Now you can't because you got trees there. That's a whole nother, that's not the code though.
It is, but it does it's kind of like.
But there's a value to having a tree-lined sidewalk, right, as well. And if you look at sort of national practice, they'll tell you that shade trees and street trees, you know, add value to the facilities and to the village center. So,
Yep.
again, the concept is what do you wanna have? Do you wanna have a blown-out town center, or do you wanna have a tight village center? So, Amber saw things kind of going backwards for a while, did a streetscape project, tightened our code up, and had infill, and now what you're left with is kind of this, people are actually filling in and building to center. If you look just, north of your, so if you said, hey, look, the area north of Maple, is that still a walkable neighborhood or walkable community? I would argue it's a lot harder to really kind of walk that community, right, than it is on the blocks from from Florence to, East Church, or from East Church up to the next.
Yeah, Roswell's where I'm usually.
Right,
And
so,
you gotta remember in the master plan, we talked about putting parking behind, and then we're trying to work on that as well, as part of the plan.
Partially was behind, but even the minimum, which is good, I think our maximum was too high. But part of switching our, what we wanted for parking, lowering it, was on-street parking.
Right, but we can.
0 to 10, you can if you get rid of snow, but like I said,
so I'm very biased on this subject matter. I look at places like Pelicanville, I look at places like Steamboat Springs, Stowe, heavy snow loads, huge snow loads, all building to zero lot line because they know that that's the best way to create a small micro walkable environment. I also think that that the villages that we talk about, right, villages will span a mile, usually in length along a road, approximately. And if you look at like tight areas in Lancaster, Hamburg, what you see is that those places have thrived off of that downplay the parking, upplay the street amenities, the street trees, the walkable streetscape, and buildings that are tight to one another. So, I noticed I haven't brought up the very biased, like Williamsville, right, as an example, but that Route 5 is it's a 5-lane. They plow with tandems both ways. It throws a lot of snow. A lot of those villages don't have huge budgets, but that main artery becomes the sort of business hub for that place, and that's how they go about it. One of the best example I can point to would be like Kenmore with Delaware and Delaware. Kenmore does a really good job of effectively mitigating snow, having large street trees, and having a lot of full retail. So, it's one of these chicken and egg scenarios. If you are a little brazen, you get somebody to infill, say somebody was gonna buy the car wash site, right? And start to infill that. You may say, well, that's one of those places where we could throw snow and get snow relief. At the same time, man, be pretty impactful to have buildings built out to the sidewalk with new restaurants or businesses and residential above. So, it's
I agree with the 0 to 10 foot on the MU2, and
What was your next one?
my next one was just the glass fronts, not to change the percentage, but it's at 36 inches, just move it up to 4 foot. So again,
Yep.
we're talking snow in the MU2 area also.
And that's fine. I mean, that's really a kind of a token piece.
It's
right?
very minor, just as we blow snow, that bottom 3 foot. A lot of
You
time.
don't wanna throw a rock, you wanna keep the,
Yeah, you can keep the chute down and you can keep it contained, and I mean, even I've walked into the pub and there's, that's that far up O'Brien's, snow is plastered on there from the DOT truck going by. I think 3 foot is really, in our circumstance on the 0 to 10 foot area, 10 to 20 foot area, you could really
Right.
lower it, I mean, you keep it lower for that matter. But I think when we're real close with the snow removal situation and, you know, the way it is, I just think it should be up a little bit, so.
So
That was my
Frank,
only two issues.
You want a minimum,
Right now, the minimum is,
the sill height?
sill height is 3 foot, right now.
So you want a minimum of 4?
I would say 4 foot would be that extra foot I think would really help, you know,
2 glass, they could infill
Yep.
with wood or something
Any-
different.
anything but, you know, once you go with the transparent, have the transparent start at 4 foot, I think it's 40% if I'm not mistaken.
It's 40% transparency.
Yep. At 3 foot or higher is where it would be.
You might need to, I'm trying to think of how the transparency.
Maybe lower that to 35 or something.
Yeah, because I think you're starting to stretch what somebody could do in terms of height and
A door and, yeah, where it's not all glass. Correct.
so I would say that if you're gonna shift it, then you lower it to 35 and you raise the minimum sill height to,
4 foot.
that's probably 6 to 1, half dozen the other.
Yep. So,
Okay.
that was my 2 concerns.
I'm good.
The parking lot screens. So, can you explain them to me a little bit in more detail, because I think it says off-street parking spaces shall be provided at a minimum of 1.5 spaces per 1,000 square foot for non-residential leasable areas. So that is any rentals of just apartments, or is what I'm assuming?
The 1.5 per residential unit,
Yes.
it's per unit, right? So if you say I'm putting in 10 units, then you're gonna have 10 at 1.5 per unit.
Okay.
Versus the rest of the parking percentage is made up of maximum floor plate. So for your commercial, it's really tabulated based on maximum floor plate. I mean, I would tell you, just get rid of parking minimums altogether. The market will drive what people wanna do with parking. So if you look at
I
that.
thought we did.
No, you're still off-street parking should be provided at 1.5 spaces per 1,000 square feet of non-residential leasable area.
So it's, you know, anything commercial needs to be 1.5 per 1,000, and then the residential's 1.5 per unit, correct?
I mean, look, if you said, hey, we're not gonna provide you a parking minimum at all, then businesses are gonna come in and say, hey, on a new building, I'll lease this space, but I need X amount of minimum parking areas. So you're not setting a maximum parking area, you're just telling them the minimum parking areas. You don't really need to do that. If somebody wants to build with no parking area, do you care? Maybe you do. I've seen plenty of examples where people build with no parking, and it works out just fine. You know, park down the street. You've got a mile of on-street parking in both
Right.
directions.
Residential, you would keep that, correct?
I would say that because residential usually implies overnight parking, then you should keep that,
Okay, I agree, that's all.
because otherwise you're asking for trouble.
Yep.
All right, so going to landscaping.
Hold on, can we go back to G?
Oh, sure.
G, are you asking that be taken out then?
No, I didn't quite understand what the
Do you-
residential uses are, because one person, one apartment,
No, I'm talking about the non-residential leasable area. He's saying, are you fine with taking the 1.5 spaces per 1,000 and having no minimum out?
for non-residential leasable areas, so that's for any businesses.
Right, having no minimum.
Not unless we're gonna have more off-street parking somewhere.
Well,
it's definitely something I don't have a problem with looking into the future and setting a time frame on this in a few years.
But as of now, you wanna have it at 1.5 spaces per 1,000 feet. That's the question.
Unless we get a snow removal system in town and actually can't have parking on streets in the wintertime.
Okay, just
Getting
leave
rid of
it,
some trees, but I don't know.
leave it as it is. Your next question was, Ben, or Rich?
Landscaping.
Yes.
So it's saying MU1, one planting unit equals mature shade tree, 2 minor, it's telling you basically you need 15 linear feet of decorative planters.
Yes.
And that is to be between the 0 and 10 setback.
So, yeah, so right now, if you're looking at MU1, well, yeah, so essentially, right, so MU1, and MU2 are the same. So, based on your square foot or your linear foot of space, yeah, you want planting, we wanna see vegetation. But you can get that with a mature shade tree or 2 minor deciduous. You know, you don't have to add landscape material to the front of the building, if you're doing street trees. So this case, you know, what you see, now that you're gonna relax the setback distance in MU1, I would tell you, better make sure there's some vegetation on the front of the building, or you're gonna get a lot of hardscape right up to the front of the building, because people aren't gonna wanna maintain vegetation there. And it's not gonna look right, because it's not a parking area. So, you know,
But in an example, like eating seafood, what would he have to have there?
I'm there, so I don't have to have anything.
I know, but if he was
This
to,
isn't about, just to be clear, it's not about me, I'm already there.
right, but I'm asking.
I know, I just wanted to make sure everybody else knew I wasn't just sitting here complaining about me, because I'm
let's
there.
Let's pick an example like if somebody were to come in and redo the tractor store for a bit, right? Part of that building's already close to the road, part of the building's set back from the road. So if I said, okay, I'm gonna take the building, that portion that's set back from the road, and build a new building up to the street, take the back portion of the building off, and create parking back there. What has to happen between my right-of-way and my building, right? That's the realm of reality that you're in. So, under under that code, that's 22512E landscaping, if anybody needs to follow this at some point over recording. The landscaping minimums are set such that you would say a minimum of 1 planting unit, which could again be a mature shade tree or 2 minor deciduous trees, is required for 30 feet of linear space. So if I had that tractor store, which is probably 250 linear feet along the road, maybe more, I can't picture, right? So if I'm doing that 200 linear feet, now I've got to look at that and say, can I get 6 shade trees? If I can't get 6 shade trees, should I be doing something else? The idea is that it's good to have buildings built to the sidewalk, but if all you have is asphalt, concrete, and building, it's still not a very attractive place to be. So we're trying to introduce green space into the mix. So one of the ways you could do that is you could say, all right, I don't have room to put enough shade trees in front of my building, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use my 10-foot allowed setback to put a planter in, right? And now for my planter, now I can get my units from, 2 evergreens or 5 shrubs or 10 perennials.
I got an example.
Okay.
Stop Square in Hamburg.
can step the building back a little bit, you don't have to be right at the intersection, you can put planters in front of it.
Okay, are you
In
good?
a case of like a small building, a narrow building, like the building that Eats a Pizza's in, I think I know the pizza place. Right, it's a narrow building, it's probably 75 feet, right? You're looking for basically 2 shade trees, somewhere in that range.
So on that, does the area between the curb and the sidewalk
Be in
count?
the
or
front,
not?
like it has a tree now.
Yeah, usually we would say you could count the tree pits.
Okay.
You need a DOT permit for a tree pit, but if you can plant the tree pit, or if you have an existing mature shade tree that you're leaving, right?
There you go.
Or you can have a planter in front.
But remember, the planning board's gonna have a little bit of discretion with this. So if somebody really can't fit it, then planning board's gonna be able to look at that and say,
Right. You can't do it.
right, what you wanna see is that the overall composition's good. So if you look at figure 34, I know, I apologize to people who don't have it in front of you, but figure 34 shows the scenario where the street is right up to the sidewalk. And so the plant material have to come between the sidewalk and the building. But if you have room between the sidewalk and the street, even though it's right of way, if you get a permit, put shade trees there.
I have a question about the trees. Don't they heave the sidewalks up? Like, I know when you walk in Hamburg, there's a lot of trees that cause the
It's
sidewalks.
the type of tree, and.
Is that addressed in here, the types of trees? So it doesn't ruin
We
the
did
sidewalks?
discuss, I don't recall if it's in there, but it's mainly the oaks or the, ones that they planted in the village a long time ago, because I lived there. And so now they are planting other types of
Oh,
trees,
okay.
and then they have a height, so they only grow, so they won't hit the lines anymore. So it changes a little bit, but the type of trees,
Make a difference.
yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, and then the other piece of the puzzle is, in order to plant along 62, you're gonna have to follow New York State DOT tree planting.
And they have
You
set
know,
standards.
They're gonna have certain trees you can choose from, because they don't want them heating stuff. But if you, so if you think about it, like a lace bark elm, which is the new hybrid elms, they get tall canopies, their roots grow, they don't flush out sideways, they grow deep. But you also have to prepare the pit correctly. So you gotta have a deep pit with, Cornell structural soil in it, so that you're not trees not desperately trying to get through the sidewalk, or past the sidewalk to find water, right? So if you follow the rules and get the DOT permit, then you're probably gonna plant something that's gonna be successful.
I'm not gonna vote yes on it.
The biggest problem with trees along like 62 or along a state route is usually, first you need a salt tolerant variety, and then second, you need something that's heat tolerant, because, the watering is a whole different issue, and I don't know if you water as a town or not, but,
Oh, we do.
Oh, we water a lot.
okay.
That's the
Arlene
trees
can
though.
tell you all about it.
So one more quick question, because I'm wondering what other towns are doing. So in some of these things, it says existing vegetation must be adequately protected during and after construction, must survive a minimum of 2 years.
So what that is somebody banks on existing trees that they accidentally hit during construction to get their site plan approval. The tree dies, they've already got their site plan approval. Now, basically, you have recourse to say, okay, you guys have to go and replant, because your site plan approval is based on you saying, I'm gonna maintain this tree, and we just didn't.
So your building inspector is supposed to actually,
Your building inspector's got recourse on a follow-up, right?
Don't worry, I'll be after your tree.
Thank you.
I can already see
Not
Rich hitting
appreciative.
it with the construction thing. He
Oh.
loves trees so much. Okay.
Let's put a
Any other questions or discussion on the mixed-use district design standards? Brian, I'm just gonna ask that the minimal changes that were made, that could be sent to a new draft so that we can set the public hearing.
So I have the sill height change and the corresponding percentage of blazing change. I have the MU 110 and 20-foot setback changes, and then no changes on the parking.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
I just got one comment. My wife is handicapped, she can't walk that far. I go to the village of Hamburg, I can find a handicap spot, you know, where I wanna go, I'll go. If not, I drive on. Like Juicy Burger, we like to go there a couple times, you can't get near it. She can't walk from the parking lot, it cuts down on the handicapped people. And, just like on, from the pub, you got the trees, that flower garden, you park up there, if the parking lot's full. Open up the doors in the flower garden, she got one or two choices, stay in the car or walk through the flower garden. I mean, I'm sorry, but this is it, and, but
I don't know
I'm
that,
blessed with this, so I'm just telling you what a problem is why.
For once, you and I agree.
Yay! And you gotta look at some of this, I mean, I could walk from Maple Avenue down to the pub and get something to eat. My wife can't do it. And same with Juicy Burger and Hamburg, and the parking lot over.
so, you know, again, I think one of the things to do is certainly, you know, you've got existing parking, on-street parking. There's no reason why you couldn't ask the state to dedicate, on-street parking that's fully accessible. So that you have, handicap spaces in the on-street parking. The other, I mean, the issue with the pub, and the planning for the pub, I would tell you that from a logistics standpoint, it looks nice, but it probably hasn't been executed correctly, because you do open the door, then you've gotta walk through planning, right? You should be able to open your door in the right of way, get through the right of way to the sidewalk, and from the sidewalk to the door without having to negotiate a planning. So we're not suggesting that somebody open planting in the right of way. The right of way should be hardscape. Street trees can occur, but those occurrences, generally speaking, I mean, until you get a really mature street tree, you're talking about, you know, 6-inch, 7-inch, 8-inch diameter, even for a more mature street tree. Once you get, you grow older and bigger, but you're looking at a mile of on-street parking in each direction. So taking away the areas of street trees in, it should be hardscape. You should not have to negotiate a planter there. The planter should occur near the building, but not in front of the door, not near the door. So you should be able to go from a car across a hardscape right-of-way to a sidewalk to a door without ever having to negotiate a plan. Aside from those few moments where you have a tree, and then, you know, obviously that one spot's not gonna work.
Okay, so I'm gonna just ask that we move on to the signage. Is everybody good with the mixed-use districts? Yes. In regards to signage, I've asked Brian to come here for an opportunity to answer any questions that you may have. This is not the time, I don't think, to debate everything that you don't like or don't want, but to get clarification on some of the issues that you had questions about. So, with that said, who wants to go first?
You said not to debate on what I don't like, so.
No, get
What's the
clarification.
point of saying anything?
There
I
were some
understand why you
questions
have
that you
this.
had, I thought, some specific questions.
Yes, I did. Sorry, I was still in that much juice. I'm the only one that has questions?
I have them written down. So, what, go ahead, Gary, you had some.
Yeah, I would like to, I don't know if it's a question, it's more of a statement, but I would like the awning sign. I would have liked to see more,
Larger.
yeah, be able to print.
So one of the questions that we had was, and we're gonna use, John Roberts as an example. If an awning sign is the only sign, then can there be discretion for it to be larger? I think there can be discretion on all of this, I'm just throwing that out there, but the question was, if John Roberts just had that sign, no other sign on their property. Although they have a
Can I just,
brown sign.
yeah, well, I had a hard time with the size of the signs until it was explained to me the power of the planning board and how the planning board can increase the sign.
Versus.
Or the code, actually, I shouldn't say back up, the code committee, we went from the planning board to the code committee. So, I think this is gonna alleviate a lot. So the 4 square feet is the awning sign. If the sign code committee, which is the building department and the planning board chair, get an application in for 25 square feet of awning sign, but it looks proportional to both of them, do they have the sole right to to approve that permit?
So, yeah, so if you have, under the current way that this is written, you have a requirement per district, and the requirement sets like a baseline, right? So what we're suggesting in this code is that there's a variance process to all of this. Majority of sign companies are picking up your code, building a sign plan to your code, and done. The prospect of somebody building a unique sign that would require a variance it's not that this isn't tolerant of that, it's just saying you're gonna have to basically show us why that's a good idea.
I guess my question is, can the sign code committee grant that variance, or is the variance gotta go to the planning board, or does it go to the ZBA?
So traditionally, under this type of code, it would be the ZBA that would have to grant a variance relief.
Okay.
Because your community didn't want to burden the CBA with that, it changed that into the planning board. Which then got further altered, right?
To the sign
The
code
sign
committee,
code
yes.
committee, so, I'm trying to find the exact basis for
So,
that.
the way I understand it is, a permit comes in under this code. I say, I agree that the size can be larger. Bill Mahoney, chairman of the planning board, disagrees with me. So then do we send it right to the ZBA, or then does it go to the whole planning board?
The planning board carries the planning board still carries the discretion on this.
Okay, so the sign code committee can,
So you have a sign review committee shall review and provide recommendations to the code enforcement officer, right? So if the sign review committee, recommends, including approval with modifications, or referral to the planning board. So as a committee, you can say, we've reached an impasse, we're gonna send it to the planning board for review.
if we both agree that it can be larger though, that's it.
Then you can
End of story.
approve or approve with modification,
Okay,
yes.
okay. So then, yeah,
So you could both say, we like it larger, we're willing to give it, but we're not going to tolerate the 75% increase you want, you've gotta make it 50%. You have the authority to tell them to negotiate to something.
the sign code.
The sign review committee can approve with modifications as you see fit, or
Deny.
or send it to a planning board.
And then so now if, and just hypothetically, we don't, we send it to the planning board, correct, a sign. The planning board says, no, it has to be,
So it's a
That-
zoning issue.
so
They
then,
they-
can it go to the ZBA? I mean,
They can,
obviously,
yes.
by then,
It's a
How does
zoning
it get
issue,
passed?
so they
Yes.
can always seek,
the
right,
ZBA.
the reason for a ZBA is so that they can seek a variance from the
Okay.
code. But you'd have, it'd be an area variance, and you'd still have to explain why the area variance is necessary. So there is it's sort of a two-stage appeal process here.
Mhm.
The first thing asks for you to work it out with the signage committee.
Yep.
So you're just giving them a starting point. Here's what we're gonna permit. If you come in and you meet these, you're done, right? We can't hold you hostage on it, you're good.
Mhm.
If you have something that's different from this, now you're gonna have to win our approval. Which isn't so different from how your code currently works.
No, it goes right to the ZBA.
Right.
It bypasses, there's no committee that bypasses the planning.
Right, so it becomes one of these, if I'm a business, would I rather go into a ZBA hearing where I could get just denied? Or would I rather have a process in which I could negotiate?
Mhm.
So, with the awning sign, one of our suggestions was 4th Street to 60% of the awning.
Okay.
I guess my question is why limit the sign on the awning? If the awning is going to be there anyways, then
Because-
why not allow them to make the sign bigger? Because my theory on this is the planning board is going to take the minimum or what we suggest in here, and that's gonna be the Bible, because that's usually what happens.
But the planning board's not getting it first. The first group is the sign review committee.
Correct, if they both agree, but it depends on who's on there.
So if you look at if you look at the image on page 19, which is 25, or 225-29 signage, B awning sign, and then there's an inappropriate image. This is looking at an awning straight on. You can overfill an awning sign and it can really start to look like junk. And one awning sign by itself might not. Two awning signs overpacked start to really look pretty bad. You've lost the class of an awning sign, and you've now entered, 1990s Elmwood, where people are just throwing all the lettering they can up, and it gets to be way too much. And so, we're into aesthetics here. So what we're saying is, in this code, here's a maximum. If you come in with this, you're just gonna skate through. If for some reason you have a compelling reason to break through that maximum, you've got the ability to win over a design review committee. And if that still doesn't work, you have the ability to win over a planning board. And if that still doesn't work, you've got the ability to go to the ZBA and make your case for why you legally should be able to break it.
So, I am going to be putting a business in this town which this desperately needs, and now that if I don't do a 4 square foot sign and want it a little bit bigger, I am now going to have to go, hopefully get it passed by them. If not, then I gotta wait another month to go to the planning board. If not, then wait another month to go to the zoning board. So now I'm talking 3 months out before I can get
No,
a sign.
2 months, because
But
it would be.
that's if you get it done in between.
If you're, okay,
They could do it that day. But
right now, if you're legitimately going to open your business and it's a question of timing, then you're going to apply for a temporary sign permit anyways. And you're gonna have a temporary signage up, you're not gonna wait 4 months to have your permanent signage. So the question becomes, how big is too big? So where we get the numbers are, we were asked to provide a sense of design. right? It's subjective. Admittedly, everything in this sign code is somewhat subjective. So as designers and planners, our recommendation and that of your committee was somewhere in this range, right? So a minimum clearance of 9 feet, that's good industry best practice. A maximum height of 2 feet, you know, on the sign, it's on the awning sign. Maximum area of 4 square feet is pretty big, because it's gonna allow you to do that entire bottom band pretty well. And then a maximum number of awnings at 1 per awning, right? So you, instead of doing, because that's the other thing, right? You see people cut an awning in half and do 2 signs. And, you know, you can make it whatever you want as a board. You could make that 12 feet. From our perspective, once you get past 4 square feet on a typical awning sign, you're probably too much. But if somebody can show how it can still look good, go through a process.
So I guess I get what they had, and you guys suggested, the sign, or the sign committee suggested. Down the road for a walkable community, when you get it to become a walkable community, that's great, but as a business owner, I need signs out there for the 20,000 cars that are driving by that don't live in town to know what I'm selling. And a 4 square foot sign, unless we definitely agreed to go up on that, I can't even remember because we talked a few
Or
different times.
4x4 on projected sign.
4x4 is 16 square foot.
Says 16 square foot.
My recommendation would be then to not use an awning sign if you're advertising to vehicle volume. When awning signs are trying to deal with vehicle volume, they're absurdly big, because you're only passing that awning sign for a brief moment. You're not looking at the awning sign coming down the street. You only see it when you're in front of it. You can't read letters on a bevel while you're heading down a street correctly.
Which is why John Roberts has the ground sign and.
So an awning sign really is meant to project across the street to people who are walking, or to people who are walking. If you're using a 45-degree angle or a 30-degree angle to advertise to pedestrians, you're doing it wrong, right? You're not. You're advertising to something much bigger. And so you see this in New York City a lot, right? You'll see these huge awning signs. It's because they're projecting to everybody. Everybody can look down at that sign. It's just a perspective. Then you should be into a ground mount or a building mount sign at that point, because you're turning it 90 degrees perpendicular to the road, so that vehicles are looking at the side of the sign and being able to read the lettering.
See, and that's where I think the 16 foot, I mean, the sign, my sign that's up there now, which you really can't read all that well, is 20 square foot.
Is it an awning sign?
No, it's a
Projection.
projected sign. So I'm just saying, I think all of our signs, maximums are too small.
What
So
was the
I
size
understand that's
of
your perspective.
pizza sign?
I agree. I mean,
That's around 25 square feet.
you know, the question kind of comes back to the chicken and egg scenario. If I make it a place that's hospitable for pedestrians, will pedestrians come, and will businesses that want to cater to pedestrians come? If I make it hospitable to vehicle volume and not to pedestrians, then I'm basically replicating what we've done in Western New York for the past few decades. So I'm not here to tell you, hey, this is, what we have is, we have your comprehensive plan saying create walkable tight pedestrian node. Then we have a committee saying, yeah, we want to keep everything tight and pedestrian and classy. Then we have this question about how big should signage get, and how big should signage be. I mean, if you really want to let people blow it open and advertise to everybody, just go allow them to do the video stuff or the digital displays.
If you looked at the signs up and down Main Street right now, are you saying like, because you just said that they want to make it classy. So
Well,
are you saying then that John Roberts isn't classy and like the four corners, because
It's not
none of that would be
my
passed.
I would argue that the idea is to start somewhere that is small and then have people convince you why their sign is good enough to allow them to increase the sign. Don't allow them to do something of right that's enormous, because you'll never get it back. But if you make them start small and convince you to go bigger, now you actually are, you're creating a restraint. It's like any other negotiation, right? If you are negotiating a contract and you wanna hit 2%, you know, you're not gonna allow them to open at 3, or you're not gonna open at 3 because it's gonna end up at 3. So you're gonna say, hey, I'm gonna open at 1, you're gonna open at 3, we're gonna hit 2. Like, that's, the goal here is to accept the fact that there's always gonna be variation out there in the sign world, because it's artistic and subjective, but it's to set some threshold for minimum. And if John Q. Public wants to get in and open fast, and they just grab your maximums and they build to the maximums, fine. You've got a minuscule blip on the radar of everything. But if somebody comes in with a compelling case, you know, however, you know, Dollar General comes in, or Walgreens comes in, they're gonna want, go big as we can get, as big a red W as we can get, and dwarf everything around us. So show us how big we can make that sign. And it goes pretty quick. And then, so this is a way of basically exercising some control back to say, no, you're starting here and now you need to prove it.
Do you have anything else, Rich? Any other questions?
My quick, I mean, he's answering, but the decision ends up
Right. no,
coming to
I know.
us, so.
Well, he's here to answer some.
Right, I'd say, this is how we
I
get
don't
to
see
this
how you
point.
can- I still don't see how you can think that that's big enough signage, that the stuff that you suggested. I get that you wanna be walkable, but then you wanna put trees up, so you wanna put small signs up and you wanna put trees up. No one's gonna be able to see the dang signs. I mean, if you look even now and you were to shrink some of those signs down, I don't see how you can see them, even walking. You gotta first have parking, now we just did 0 to 10 setback, so we need to have, like the village, at least the village has on-street parking, it's delineated, there's an opening. If you wanted to make the setbacks a little bit bigger so you could do that, and you have on-street parking, that's more delineated, but I disagree with how we're making these sign codes, and then
So I guess
mixed use up to the road.
if I were gonna open a toy store in the middle of town, and I had a traditional building frontage, the first thing I would do is say, I'm gonna put an awning there, but the awning's not gonna be my primary sign because I'm not really allowed enough square footage on the awning. So I'm gonna put a sign in my signboard on my building, right, and traditionally inside the signboard. And if I put that building sign in, then I know I'm gonna get, you know, a decent amount of lettering space that's gonna communicate effectively to drivers, or people right in the immediate district. As a secondary sign, I'm gonna do something in my windows, and to really target pedestrians, I'm gonna use an A-frame. So I'm hoping to hit people in 3 different ways at 3 different scales. And if I can target 3 different scales, now I made sure that, you know, hey, a motorist saw me, a pedestrian from down the street saw me, and that person who happens to be walking in front of my store because they really want to get a chicken finger sub, but tripped over the fact that I've got a sale today, saw me. And if I could hit that, sort of triangulate it like that, then I don't need my one sign to do everything.
Correct, but even our 3 signs, there's limited when you add 1 and 1 and 1. Now, we got rid of the A-frame signs needing permit, I believe, was what we decided.
Yeah, I just want to mention that, yeah.
A-frames are, they can permitted but not illuminated. So if you're not permitting those, okay, that's fine, you can do that.
We're not, we,
There's a lot of really, there's a lot of really good examples of people who use A-frame chalkboard signs, A-frame signs out there in the world. My only caution to that is there's a lot of prefabricated plastic A-frame signs that are being made right now that don't look so good. You can do that, you can do a lawn sign if you don't have an area to put a lawn sign in, and you can put a projecting sign off your building. I mean, again, it's about a balance.
okay.
No, what I have is disagreeing with his as far as the limits are too. But
That's up to
he
you
has an
as
opinion.
a board.
So,
My job
I got
is
your
to,
opinion.
my job is to tell you where our starting point is and why we put together a set of numbers.
Yeah.
So, and the board can do whatever you want.
And I'll just remind everyone that, a committee worked on both of these. Well, no,
Sign it in the planning board.
oh yeah, and then the planning board review, so, yeah, you're right. There was a committee who worked on these, and then it was submitted to the planning board for review as well. And now we're at the town board review piece, so. Okay, I will send you, Brian, the changes that our group has discussed for the signage code.
Okay.
And then we'll get the final, and we'll be able to set the public hearing for that as well. Okay. Dave,
I don't wanna beat a dead horse here, but,
Oh, it's
then
dead.
maybe we should,
is it that? The 16 square feet, did we agree on,
yeah, 4x4.
and then leaving local business, office business and all that at 6 square feet? Just so I can understand it, I'm not for debate,
I think so, yeah.
okay.
Okay. So, it's just the other part of the 6 or 4x4. So the discussion on park, we have one more discussion. And that was just to circle around on the petition that we had for, parking on George Street, across from Dairy Queen. The group was gonna do some further investigation, and so I just wanna follow up, make sure we're not.
I don't wanna grant it myself.
You don't wanna grant parking on the street,
I do want them to be able to
park on the street, so you don't wanna restrict parking on the
Yeah.
street. Okay.
I'm in the same boat on that also.
So then, Ron was gonna have some suggestions on other ways that they can mitigate the situation, right, for him moving forward with that.
Like
It
adding the
costs,
stone along the sides, so that, if that's what we're talking about, then
Okay.
Yeah,
yes. So this way it won't tear up their lawn. Well, it's not technically their lawn, but I know they take care of it.
It all depends though, are we gonna start doing that to everybody? So
That's what I'm,
Right.
that's where,
Well, I don't think they're doing it, I just think he said he would give them some info. Well, it's in the right of way. So
Correct,
actually, I think
but
they
then-
are doing it. I think he was just gonna give them some suggestions on what could be done.
then are we gonna have to take care of anybody's? I mean, my concern is starting something that you, once you start it.
And that's a discussion we can have with Ron.
but Ron's just giving them advice on what the property owner.
But one of the suggestions was doing this, like, what is it, like, gravel.
Us doing that?
It's in the right of way. We'll have a discussion with them. Okay, but I just wanna make sure we get back to them. All right. Well, the blizzard has come and gone.
It's here.
I'm just, are there any hearing of visitors? No? All right. No? Okay. I'll make a motion then to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?